So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Tide Masterclass. Obviously, this is all about how to manage your growing team, a guide on efficiency and useful tools. So obviously, this is completely dedicated to assisting, in giving you guidance on how to go about this. What are the pain points we know that small businesses are experiencing, how you can address those, and thirdly, how Tide can help you. So we obviously know that a growing team requires more of your time, brings with it additional admin to think about. I mean, this could be anything from paying your team to paying any other types of expenses. So this session is all about helping you to navigate these in order to handle them in an efficient way that saves you time and money and leaves you feeling confident and without any doubts. With us today, we have Hansa, who's part of our team here at Tide, and also Chris from one of our partners, KeyPay, who are going to be taking us through this and really giving us the really meaty content that we're looking for to really help you carry your business forward. I wanted to give you a quick tour of Zoom for those who haven't used it as much. I know that's probably not very likely in the last year or so, but just in case. So depending on how you're watching this, there's a toolbar at the top or bottom where you will see a chat room and a Q&A room. So important to differentiate between the two of these. The Q&A are really for your questions, which we're obviously going to address at the end of the session in a Q&A session. And the chat room is more for conversational chats. So try not to put any of your questions there because we might miss them. Rather have them in the questions and answers box. So before we start, we would love to get to know the audience a bit better. So we are sharing a poll with you guys. It should now appear on your screen. Please complete this for us, and I'll be sharing one more a little bit later on. I'll just give everyone a couple minutes to get through that. Okay, I can see we've got a decent number of you watching us live. Thank you again so much for joining us. And if you are watching this after the live event, great to have you along with us too. Right, so let's start. My name is Lauren Strachan, and I'm part of the team here at Tide. For those of you that are new to Tide and what we do, I just wanted to give you a bit of a quick overview of the services that we offer just before we start. So firstly, we are one of the fastest growing online business current account providers in the UK. We currently have over 300,000 members. Our aim is to provide our members, small business owners, a service that saves them both time and money when it comes to their business. So the sign-up process is really easy. Sorry, let me just end this polling. We're pretty good. The sign-up process is really easy. It takes between 5 and 10 minutes. You'll then receive your sort code and account number with your card arriving just a few days later. The app itself is really, really easy to use, and we have a huge amount of in-app products that will make your life a lot easier too. There we go in terms of that intro. Then moving on, we will now, let's go to the next slide. There we go. This includes our auto categorization tool. The categories this categorizes all your transactions. Then we also have our invoicing feature, which is really great in that it allows you to create, customize, and manage all professional invoices all from the app. And yeah, in addition to that, we have many other features. Then if I can just move on to the next slide again. We also have some fantastic membership plans to help our members even further with their business, which is known as Tide Plus. The membership is the most popular upgrade choice for growing businesses. It includes 20 free transfers a month, 1 free expense card, which Hansa will also be touching a lot on later, a legal helpline, and our friendly team is on hand to help on the phone. And you also get priority access in the in-app chat. So as you would have seen in your invites, each member that actually attends this webinar can upgrade to our Plus membership, which is normally £9.99 plus VAT per month. So off the back of attending this webinar, you would get a 2-month free trial to try out our expense card. Obviously, with that, you get 1 free expense card, and you can add up to 2 people to Tide Payroll for free, which is also great. So that's a quick intro on Tide. Obviously, you can get in touch with us if you want to find out more, if there's anything else we can answer for you, assist you with. Then the next thing to touch on is obviously the very exciting cash prize draw that we obviously also have for existing members that have attended the webinar today. So the winner will be contacted via the app chat before the end of today. Obviously after the event, once we've been able to track all the attendees, we'll make sure that you're notified by the end of today in the in-app notification, and we'll also make sure that the funds are then transferred to your account before the end of May. So yeah, that's it in terms of the intro. Now we can get into the good part. So it's time now for our panelists to introduce themselves. So yeah, Hansa, over to you.
Hi everyone. So I've actually been speaking to some of you already this week for doing a research panel interview. So this is really good. So you already, some of you already know me. I am Hansa Vagadiya. I'm a senior product manager here at Tide, and that's particularly within business services. So business services is dedicated to focusing on the goal of saving our members time and money, and that's especially around when it comes to financial admin. So example jobs to be done are things like it's sort of managing, processing your own expenses. So that's the sort of area that I own. Taking care of your invoices and ensuring that they are paid on time, as well as things like being able to pay your staff. So onto that, I would like you to introduce yourself, Chris.
Morning, everyone, and thanks, Hansa. As built, I'm Chris Deeson. I'm the UK country leader at KeyPay. I've been rattling around the payroll and pension industries for about 20 years, initially working at large corporates, but most of the past decade at fintech startups and young companies. At one point, I was a consultant, and I had my own single director limited company. And back in the Stone Age, when the world was black and white, I was also self-employed with my own garden design business. So I've kind of lived through some of the compliance and admin challenges that you all face. And I'm aware that of all the myriad reasons that we all set up our own businesses, none of those are likely to be to enjoy the thrill of wrestling with internal admin or compliance tasks. As a quick introduction to KeyPay, KeyPay is an HMRC recognized payroll and workforce management software. It's completely hosted in the cloud. It has a lot of the same integrations that you've seen from the larger Tide platform, you know, Xero, QuickBooks, etc. We work in a number of countries with businesses and partners, from the very small to the large, very large. We've been working with Tide for over a year now to produce a payroll software specifically aimed at micro and small businesses, which is easy to set up, maintain compliance, and is low on admin time. So lots of automation, time-saving features, and that software is Tide Payroll. Today, I'm really kind of looking at the challenges of payroll for these small businesses, and hopefully give you answers to some of your questions.
Great. Thanks so much, Hansa and Chris. It's great to have you both here with us. Thanks so much for taking the time out to join us today and sharing your valuable insights and tips. Chris, let's start off the fireside conversation with you. Tell us a bit about the pain points most small businesses experience when it comes to paying their team. Obviously, that completely sits in your space.
Cool. Yeah, cheers, Lauren. All right, so I think the place I want to start off is compliance. It's not the most exciting, it's not the sexiest part, but it's going to be the biggest challenge in all the areas of the small businesses face, whether it's accounting or in this case payroll. It's about making sure that you and your staff get paid the right amount, and obviously you getting paid the right amount is key as well in a small business. It's not just about the staff. And I noticed from the poll, there's a large number of you have only got one other employee. It's also about getting it paid at the right time with the right tax and pension treatments. And pension is not very sexy, but everyone does love getting paid. And also it's one of those things where no one notices it until it goes wrong. And then that obviously has an impact on the employees in terms of bills that need to be paid, et cetera, et cetera. So this is just going to be a really brief overview of some of the areas that compliance contains and the challenges within. And it's really just to kind of just highlight how many there potentially are. So, you've got to make sure, for example, that you have a PAYE scheme set up with HMRC before you start paying. You've got to make sure for each employee that you have the right tax code, the right pay rate, the right national insurance code, the right date of birth. And then you're going to have to calculate the right pay, the right tax, the right national insurance amounts, the right pension. And even having done all of that, you then got the kind of the compliance piece that we probably all think about in terms of reporting. You've got to provide information to your bank to make the payments to you and your staff. Right? You've got to provide information to HMRC. You've got to do a full payment summary every single pay period. You've got to do an employer payment summary probably every month. You've got to provide pay slips to your staff, maybe a P45 for leave terminations, a P60 at the end of the year. You've probably got to provide information to your accountant in your accounting package. You've got to provide contribution information to the pension provider, and every 3 years, pension information to the pension regulator. And that's just kind of for starters. So you can do this, or you can get someone to do this on your behalf, your accountant, your bookkeeper. But really, if you're organized and you use the right payroll software and you spend an appropriate amount of time just on the setup and getting it right, then it can be really an efficient, simple process that you can be in control of, and which isn't the thing that's dominating your business. So I said a good compliance saves you time and money. It's something to be wary of, but not to be scared of. And in terms of saving you money, claiming the employment allowance is something that can reduce your overall NI and tax bill. And most importantly, of course, it stops you getting fines. And it's very easy to kind of just forget to send something to HMRC and start picking up one of those £100 fines. But the other bit that's also good for is your employee satisfaction. As I said before, not getting paid is obviously not fun for anyone. And you have to think about things like statutory maternity pay, statutory sick pay, right? So complicated things, but these kind of come into payment at a key point in employees' lives. Either they're ill or they're going to be off on maternity. And just getting those things right and accurate and set up, absolutely critical, just a part of you being a good employer. So you won't get praised for when these things are paid correctly, but dissatisfied employees are definitely going to be a bigger headache for your business, and it can put a lot of stress on at critical times for your team. And it's kind of like, employee satisfaction compliance is a horrible thing that we all have to deal with, but employee satisfaction is a really, really important part of a small business, because ultimately it's about our teams and how they work together to deliver the end goal. And I know this actually just impacts into things like expense management, which is where I'm going to pass back over to Hansa, because again, it's one of those sort of grits in the cog. If you have poor expenses and it takes whiles to pay people back, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so interestingly on that, we've moved forward in the digital age when it comes to thinking about how our sort of employees manage their receipts and how they make expense claims. But essentially, a lot of sort of small to medium businesses tend to, I guess some of you have told us that you have sort of one team member. You tend to start with sort of doing sort of paper-based receipts, where your employee will sort of make an out-of-pocket expense. They will then fill in a form, then they'll attach the receipt, and then you'll have to then go away and have to manage that and reconcile it. And actually for your team member, that can sometimes become a really tedious task, and especially when it comes to a significant amount. So for example, if your business, as COVID opens up, you're going to be doing more business travel, and your team member has to pay for their own meals or their own hotel and accommodation, it tends to become a source of frustration if that comes out of their own pocket, and then having to submit this paperless receipt and then connecting that to a manual export. And I know all of you have your spreadsheets. You tell us all the time how much you love your spreadsheets. And then it's sort of, as you sort of come to the end of the week or the end of the month, you're then inundated with having to understand all of this paperwork that you have and making sure it matches. So actually there's employee satisfaction, but then it's also your own satisfaction as well, having to do these tasks. And it just takes a long time sort of doing that way. So I highly recommend that if you have the opportunity to do it digitally and enable your team members to upload their receipts and do all of this online versus keeping the sort of paper trail.
No, definitely. I mean, from my own experience, the biggest thing I hate is having to do, just kind of sit there and manually do expenses. And I like everyone, I just save them up for one big period.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I hate from the other end is having to go through everyone's expenses and absolutely just double check that all the receipts are there. You know, we use expense cards for a whole range of reasons, but largely it saves us as a management team having to do all of that work. But from a employee perspective, it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, typically, like our growth businesses have between, I think, 1 to 2 employees sort of at the beginning, but as you start growing and you're into the numbers of like 10 plus, you'll really find yourself being overwhelmed at understanding where the costs are being spent, and who's making the costs, and actually if you do think about moving digitally and you order your team members an expense card, it's actually really useful, because your team member will then go and spend on this card. They no longer need to be out of pocket for their expenses, and then that record of that expense is then already recorded within Tide itself, or also the banking platform, and then you can sync that to your accounting software. So you've essentially sort of removed that burden, which is really helpful. So yeah. So Chris, yeah, I actually, moving on, I was quite keen, we were talking about this yesterday, and the pain points around managing sort of automated sort of pension enrollment. Are you able to tell us a bit more about this and sort of the pain points that our members can sort of avoid in having to deal with on this?
Yeah, so I think, so pensions basically now is part of payroll, and it's as soon as you have one employee, you're immediately into having employer duties, and I think people worry about it because it's quite a complex area and there's quite a lot going on. But in practice, I think again, it's just about being prepared. It's ideally trying to do it with the software, the right software. So a lot of small businesses start off on HMRC basic PAYE tools, which is a basic PAYE tool that HMRC give, but it doesn't include pensions. So you're always having to go off and do other bits and pieces on either separate spreadsheets. Totally agree with you, Hansa. You can't be a small business without spreadsheets, although you should these days be a small business without spreadsheets. So, there's ways you can make this really straightforward and simple, and integrations is a big part of that. So just as a kind of high overview, basically every business with 1 or more employees has employer duties under automatic enrollment. This is broadly going to affect any employee aged between 22 and state pension age who earns the equivalent of £10,000 per annum, but actually the way that that's managed is on a weekly or monthly period, depending on when you make the payments. So someone might not get £10,000 across the whole year, but they might get and become eligible and become an eligible job holder based on one pay period's earnings. So again, the employer has to provide an approved pension scheme. So you have to make the choice of the pension provider. It's not down to the employee choice. You have to make a choice, set that up so that eligible employees can be automatically put into that scheme. They don't have to make any decisions. There's no barriers to entry. So typically, I guess, small employers will use companies like Nest, Smart Pensions, People Pension. Now, those would be the typical automatic enrollment providers. Obviously, there's plenty others there. And if you've got a slightly bigger business with more employees, there's more options available to you. So an enrolled employee can opt out of the pension scheme, but you can't opt them out before they've been enrolled. And to be enrolled, they have to go into the pension scheme, and they will opt out from the pension provider. Anyone who's a member of the scheme will have contributions calculated and deducted every pay period. So that's another payroll function you've got to do. And these need to be reported to the pension provider as well. And you've also got, as an employer, you have statutory communications that you have to do at various points within certain timeframes to the employees. So again, I guess this kind of relates to the compliance piece earlier on. There are stiff penalties around this for the pensions regulator for non-compliance. And you have to provide them with, and by the way, they've got a whole range of different ways of knowing who is employing people. So for example, I'm pretty sure that behind the scenes, they will kind of get some of the FPS information and see who the PAYE references are. There's also a kind of big whistleblowing piece there. So don't get caught out, don't get complacent. But again, the pension regulator will work with you around these things. I'm not going to go into all the rules around automatic enrollment, but one website that's really handy is thepensionsregulator.gov.uk. So the pension, plural, pensionsregulator.gov.uk. And there's an employer section on there that's really useful. But again, a bit like compliance, if you get everything set up and you know where you're going to go and you choose the right tools, then actually it's a really simple process. Some payroll softwares, pretty much all payroll softwares, apart from the HMRC tool, will these days have a automatic enrollment included. However, most of them probably have it as an add-on. So again, it's always good to look at stuff where the automatic enrollment is just a part of payroll and it's not an additional process. It's one of the things we worked on with Tide Payroll. But so again, it's just a question of being prepared. Once it's set up, that will just automatically provide all those communications and send that data off. It will actually reduce your overall amount of work, because even if you were outsourcing your payroll to an accountant, they would probably be passing information back for you to upload or for you to double check. So, you know, there's good things about this that you can do in terms of just managing this yourself. And I think that efficiency piece again is something that kind of like Hansa's kind of, you know, really focused on, and just removing some of those jobs you don't need to do.
Yeah, so actually on that, I think in terms of the biggest pain point you will have, which I'm not surprised by at all, is having the lack of time and energy to actually focus on some of these admin tasks. I truly understand that when it comes to running your businesses, sometimes the last thing you want to do is faff about with emptying your wallets out with all of your receipts that you might be hoarding, as well as thinking about having to sort of reconcile those receipts to transactions. And in terms of the time spent, I think the stat is that businesses spend around 15% of their time a week actually doing this task. And the more that we can help support you to sort of automate that, the better. And I think in terms of as teams grow, I think if you have one person, it's fine for the time being. And I know that you all have your spreadsheets, and then you'll sort of carry on with sort of following that process. But then after a couple of months, when you have got more team members, it can become quite messy. And the upkeep of spreadsheets and keeping them up to date, and making sure that things match, making sure receipts don't go missing, it can become your biggest burden if you just let it fester. So a part of this is sort of, I guess, being organized. Some of you absolutely detest doing this task and you sort of hand it over to your accountant, while some of you are really organized and you'll do it on a daily, weekly basis. And I think just from that feedback and knowing how our members are doing it, I would highly recommend that you carve out some time to empty out your receipts from your wallets or the shoe boxes, as we call them. And at the end of the day, to take a pictures. So we have a receipt importer where you just take a picture from your phone, and you can do like mass bulk images uploads and then upload them online. So at least then they're all stored somewhere in one place. So that's something I would recommend. If you can't get to it on a daily basis, I truly understand. You might be off-site visiting a client and you've been running around really busy. So try and perhaps do it on a weekly basis if you can. That's something that we would recommend, just so you don't sort of lose track of that from a digital point of view. And the other one, which I'm really passionate about in helping you all, is essentially the goal is to delegate to your team members. And the more you can do that, the better. They're the people making the expenses. So they actually have the receipts from their meals for a lunch, or if they've paid for office supplies and the like. And actually what you want to do is get them to do some of that admin tasks on your behalf. So I'll probably showing a little bit of a demo later on today of how your team members can do that using Tide. But I would say from that point of view, it's really key to get organized and think about this. Even though it might not be top of mind, it will really help in the long term as your team scales.
And I think, to pick up on that, it's actually about, we're all in small businesses. Dave Brailsford might be trying to win gold medals for UK cycling, right? But we're actually just trying to make sure that we all have successful businesses and that we have good work-life balances. And I think COVID has actually kind of highlighted how much the life balance is good. And my head actually shows that getting your work-life balance wrong has repercussions. So if you're wondering, I just did that on a dog walk yesterday when I should have been enjoying the dogs and the walk. And I started looking at my phone, doing some work, and walked into a tree. But which was kind of a salient point to me. And this morning I did the dog walk without the phone, and I enjoyed it a lot more, to be honest. But actually, we've all been there where you kind of suddenly have that box of receipts and you spend a horrible Sunday afternoon going through them or whatever. And I've got to say, expense cards changed my life, because literally I don't have to go through for my guys now. I don't have to go through all their receipts. I can just chase them if they're missing. In the old days, when I used to be out on the road and had a hotel receipt, or I had a meal, I wouldn't even leave the restaurant before I'd submitted my expense, right? Or updated the receipt into it, and then I didn't have to submit an expense. And I think it's so much about, if you can not have to have these set aside times when you've got downtime to do admin, you'll resent them less. I spend literally no time on expense management anymore. I have, I've got to do my own occasionally. I still have to go and obviously put invoices in. But generally speaking, just no time. And again, it's about automation and it's about interconnectedness. Hansa said about the expenses about, obviously it's from the employee to there, but it's also from you to your bank. It's from the bank to the accounting package. And actually, if in the old days, all that was going to happen was your accountant was going to ask you for a stack load of receipts. And it's kind of the same with payroll, right? It's like, you've got to provide these reports to various pieces. You've got to give a pay slip to an employee. In the old days, because I'm very old, I used to get the brown envelope with the money, remember cash? That would be unscribbled on the outside. That took someone ages to do, even for like 10 people, right? The bookkeeper would come in, they spend all the day trying to put the money in there. Then you kind of got into printed pay slips. Well, now it's like, why would you do pay slips? You just put it into an employee portal. The employee does it on their app. Like, employees work off their phones as well now. I'm sure you're going to agree. And it's about those marginal gains, right?
Yeah, definitely. So Chris, actually, on that, can you tell us a bit more about how our members can pay their employees in an efficient way, or the pain points that come with that, and thinking about that?
Yeah, so traditionally the way that and even really large businesses do this. I've known businesses of 250 employees, and they're basically paying their staff weekly, and thus usually the CEO or the finance director is actually going to be typing in data line by line to check it into a bank.
Wow.
To make the payment, right?
Really? Oh, yeah. That's painful.
I would say for most of our banking, most of our clients that are obviously using banking, they're still downloading a CSV, and then they're going to, or a text file, and then uploading that into their bank. And that's great. But if someone wants to go and check a CSV file, the chances are you're going to mess up the formatting when you come out. So that's the goal, and it's not quite there yet, but it's not quite there yet because of COVID. The catch-all excuse is that ultimately it will just immediately go from the payroll software, and it will immediately straight into Tide, and that you will basically go and just authorize that payment in your Tide app. In the short term, there's a file to download and upload, but it's not a CSV file. It's effectively the file that will automatically get pushed through. And the chances when you're making payments of people, when you're typing stuff in or you're opening up files and amending them, the chances of you mistyping something quite high. The chances of an error on an upload to a bank file, it's happened to me once. I think I got 30 years before I didn't get paid one day. And the whole team, and it wasn't where I am now, I just want to point out, the whole team didn't get paid their January pay run. which that's when you got your credit card bills, right? Those are the kind of mistakes that are easy to make. Everyone makes them. It always happens. You just want that to be absolutely fully automated. You want to be making sure that anything you send into Xero from your payroll is fully automated. There's no miskeying. Even if you're not doing it, you can just pass it on to your bookkeeper. You certainly want to make sure that anything you send to HMRC or to the pension provider is accurate, so they'll pull that stuff down. And it's this kind of web where if you have a whole load of spreadsheets, you don't have that integration. You have a whole range of defined jobs you have to do, and you have to pull it together. And I just go back to this piece that I kind of started with. This isn't why we started businesses. We didn't start businesses for the admin. Most people who start businesses probably not that good at admin, unless you're your business's bookkeeper or accountant, in which case probably, yeah. But for the rest of us, if we're making cakes or if we're being garden designers or whatever, that's what we went in for. And I think just trying to take a step back, allow technology to take the strain. I don't know about you guys, but I have these little things going around in my head that I need to do. And it's like when they're not there because it's all automated or because I've done them, right? My head can focus much more on what I need to achieve with a business, rather than just kind of getting distracted by those little sort of important things, but not really core to what I'm trying to do with the company.
Wow, okay, that's really interesting, Chris. Yeah, we didn't mean to scare you all, but yeah, that's definitely like a really important pain point to address as your team scales. So yeah, that's really good advice, Chris. So yeah, I guess moving on then from that, in terms of thinking about expenses, the one thing that I see time and time again is companies not really thinking about expense policies and sort of procedures and having a sort of guideline in place, especially as with lockdown ending. I think a lot of you want to sort of be able to do business travel and do more around expenses that relate to that. So, you know, meals and accommodation. And what tends to happen is if you don't have an expense policy in place in terms of understanding a set budget that you might have for the month or the quarter, or how much you can then spend on that, it can lead to not really understanding the sort of cash flow of your business and understanding the sort of direct costs that you have. So for example, I'm going to pick a new homes property developer. You might send someone out to do a sort of client call, and you have given them a budget of £150 a night on a hotel accommodation. And actually, if that team member then goes above that or then spends more than the allocated amount, but you haven't really set out that budget, it means that they've now overspent. Your receipts sometimes will no longer match with what your team members are claiming for, and it can become quite an overwhelming sort of burden for you. Cash flow management is probably the biggest killer for small businesses. And even though sort of, as Chris says, even though expenses might not sound sort of a sexy sort of subject, it's something you really need to pay attention to. So as a small company, I would advise just looking up like basic sort of templates on expense policies online, sort of outlining what you want your team members to be able to spend for, and what the sort of rules are around that. In terms of expense cards, I don't know, Chris, if you're using them now. We've launched functionality for spending limits, and essentially it means that you can order expense cards for your sales team members, your admin staff, people who are paying for office supplies, and then you can actually have a budget on how much you want them to spend. So if you want to make sure that one of your team members doesn't go absolutely crazy and buys, I don't know, £200 worth of chocolate, you can then actually control that spend that can happen. So that's something that I really advise, and especially if your team is growing really fast. So yeah, that's something to consider.
Thanks, Hansa and Chris. I think we've covered some good ground there. What we really did want to provide everyone with today was a demo specifically on Hansa's side. Just to give you a full understanding of what it is that we have coming, what you can look forward to. Before we get into that, just a reminder to log any questions that you may have, because after this we will go into a questions and answers session. I see we've got a couple ready and waiting. But yeah, for now, over to you, Hansa.
Right. So in terms of all the pain points that we were talking about in what you can do, I wanted to show you, well, first, you've all seen the Tide app. So if you have it, open it up. I'm showing you this from my live account. If you go into the More menu, you'll see the section of expense cards. So I've got a bunch of team members here that I've ordered expense cards for. And the one thing that I want you to all know about is basically spending limits. So I've got my company that could become a company in the future, called Unicorn Party Supplies. And Stephen is one of my employees. And essentially, if Stephen, let's say, has to order, let's say, unicorn balloons, is something that is vital for my business. I want him to not go crazy and actually be able to set a spending limit. So I can set a spending limit of £100. So this is a monthly spending limit. And then he will not be able to sort of go over that. So again, when it comes to thinking about spend budgets and thinking about expense policies and having sort of set rules in place, this can then help with that. And then the other thing that I'm really excited about, which I haven't actually shown anyone, which a small group of Tide members will have access to, is the team member web app. Now, this is an app whereby you can then invite your team members. So I can then invite Stephen here to be invited to join Tide, and essentially he will then set up his account, and he will then have the ability to upload receipts and notes directly to the transaction that's happened. So this is what it will look like. Your team member will sign in, and then they'll be able to see their own timeline of spend. So Stephen hasn't done any spending just yet, so I will show you a quick demo that the developers on my team actually just showed today, which I have been very, very excited about. And I'm so happy that we can actually do this for our members. But essentially, as your team members then will be able to log in, they'll see their own timeline here, which is basically a list of their transactions, and they'll only see their own transactions. So they won't, for example, they won't see everyone that you've paid. So it will include things like your payroll. It will be the only expenses that they make. So if I have gone and spent on meals and hotels and accommodation, it will then be shown here. And then your team member will, or basically have the opportunity to add their own notes to that transaction. For example, if I had a meal, I can then say that I spent £150 at a particular a meal, and it included expenses for both Chris and Lauren, so it includes two people's expenses. And then, of course, the good old adage of uploading your receipts. I'm weirdly excited about something that should be so sort of tedious that you all find, but this will save you so much time. Push your employees to do this for you so that you don't have to do it. And once that receipt is then uploaded, it will then be synced to that transaction, and then you can then sync this to accounting software. So really about saving you guys time and money and the burden of having to do this on a regular basis. So yeah, these are the sort of two sort of functionalities that I would sort of highly recommend that you go and look at.
Right, thanks for that, Hansa. That was really great. Yeah, I mean, thanks, Chris and Hansa. I'll take this opportunity to really thank you guys. It's been great to have you on board with us today and to share all the insights and valuable knowledge that you have. Before we move on to the questions and answers, obviously feel free to put any in the questions chat that you have. But before we do that, we've just got one last poll just for you to launch the session, just for you to rate the session. So we can obviously make sure that we can improve, make sure we bring the type of content that you're looking for going forward that will really help you and benefit you in running your business. So you should have that on your screen now. We'll give you a minute or two to complete that. And maybe while we're doing that, I know we did have one question from David asking, do you archive these webinars for future viewing again? So David, the short answer is we definitely do. We load these on our YouTube channel. They also housed on the event section of our website. But also after this webinar, we will make sure that we, that we share this with everyone who's registered for the event. I know some people register and aren't able to attend at the time, so we still want them to have access to this, to this kind of helpful information. Then we do have a couple of other questions, but we don't necessarily have the experts on this call to answer them. But we've answered where we can, but if there's something that we couldn't have answered, I know, Hansa, you've answered Donovan's question. Do you maybe just want to talk through that quickly?
Yeah, so IBAN in international payments is probably the most highly requested feature that we have at Tide. And even though I might be asking you all about categorization and expense cards, you will always throw in like, where's IBAN? When is that coming? This is definitely something that the product team is working on and is on the product roadmap. So you have been heard, and it is sort of being looked at. So yeah.
Great, thank you, Hansa. Then we do have one from Adrian. Adrian, I think this type of question is quite intricate, and as I say, we don't really have the expertise on this call specifically for this. So we'll be sure to get in touch with you and really answer any questions that you have with the subject matter experts on that.
It's probably.
Do you want to touch on it, Chris?
I'll take a little punt. So I think
Sure.
Obviously the key about accounting software is that accounting software is really complex, and making tax digital falls into that. I think, Hansa and I both touched on this in that the expenses piece integrates, and a lot of the banking functionality integrates immediately with the main cloud softwares in the accounting space. And again, Tide Payroll does the same thing. So QuickBooks Zero, it automatically posts all of that payroll information, including the employment allowance, directly into the accounting space. So again, it just minimizes the amount of work at the end of that. Obviously, there's certain things like submissions and stuff to various tax bodies that need to come out of that. So it is, you're right, Lauren, it's absolutely a complex piece, I think. And also, like, there's no one accounting package that everyone uses in the UK. So again, people have their own preferences. But the key is that all of these things interact and integrate seamlessly with those main players in that space, especially the main players in the space that are looking at smaller businesses. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about the roadmap for what Tide's got.
Yeah,
that does all integrate in.
Yeah, I don't want to give away too much, but in terms of integration, our goal is to make it really seamless. So essentially, the magic happens where your transactions from your bank feeds basically integrate into your accounting software, and things like your receipts and your notes are then integrated, so you can then work with your accountant to do those sort of bookkeeping activities. The goal is to not have to, move data from one sort of platform to another, and it can seamlessly sort of integrate and work together. So yeah.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, we've got another one saying, are there any plans for more finance or credit cards for Tide members? Hansa, would that be something you'd be comfortable on touching on?
So the credit product team here at Tide are working on this initiative of looking at sort of credit card functionality. So there is more to come. Once there is more information, that's definitely something that we can then share with all of you. But yeah, there's quite a lot on our product roadmaps that we've sort of heard your advice on. So yeah.
Then we've got one from David. Can a sole trader open up a free banking account and transfer an existing overdraft and possibly move to the Tide Plus account later if his business grows? Hansa, are you comfortable with that one?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one.
Yeah, we might have to just obviously get the relevant subject matter expert to just get in touch with you on that, David. And then can Tide app services, etc., be used in an internationally based business? Hansa, you can take that one.
Hang on, let me have a look. What about taking card payments? Is it that one from Wayne?
No, the one we were on now is about using in the Tide App for services. Can we use them in an internationally based business?
Yeah, so at the moment, I think just thinking about sort of international payments in general, that's sort of a work in progress with the payments team. So, yeah.
Perfect. And then, yeah, what about taking card payments? We can touch on that too. The one from Wayne.
Yes, so again, we have a sort of product team that's being set up around this. So for the likes of businesses who have a shop front, it's thinking about how you can then use Tide sort of on a physical sort of point of view, and thinking about how you can take card payments sort of in shop. So yeah, there's lots of functionality around that that's also being sort of discussed at Tide.
Perfect. And then Hansa, this one's definitely for you. Can my employees use the Tide app to see their allocated balance, remaining balance, and transaction history?
So on this one, the way we're sort of launching multi-user business is that you will be able to set permissions on what your team members will be able to see. So for example, your expense card holder will see something different to your co-director or your accountant. So essentially you don't really want your expense card holder to perhaps see your account balance and thinking about all of the other sort of transactions you might have. For example, you don't want your expense card holder to see the payroll that you're running and how much you're paying other sort of employees. So you'll be able to then control that once you invite your team member. So yeah, multi-user access is something that's been highly requested, and expense card holder access will be the sort of first sort of point of call, and then we'll be moving on to the other role types.
Great. And then Lucy, I know you'd had a question on explaining the various fees. I think it's probably best if we get directly in touch with you, see how we can help you. A lot of these questions will be obviously specific to your business, so it's really going to be worthwhile that someone from Tide gets in touch with you and can help you specifically, with your requirements. We do have one other question for Chris, in terms of do I need to have a pension provider selected before I take on an employee?
So the short answer is no. So you can take on an employee, and at that point, they might be part-time, especially if you're just starting up and getting an employee in, and it may be that they're going to be underneath that £10,000 per annum figure on a monthly or weekly basis. So you can wait until they get to the point where they are going to need to be enrolled and then select your provider. However, I would genuinely say, if you know that you're going to get to that point where they are going to get enrolled at some point, I would just go and make that selection piece up front. So you want to go and spend a little bit of time looking at it. So it's probably likely you're going to go to somewhere like Nest or Smart. Your accountant might have information as to which one they might have a preference to. But it's worth doing a bit of research. It takes a little bit of time just to get it set up and all the documents there. So if you're not prepared, potentially you then have to go back and do a whole load of retrospective submissions. But the short answer to the question is you don't have to. But again, if you might as well be prepared for it. It can sit there until the point it's needed. It's not like you're under any pressure to put money into it until that first employee goes in. And there's more information, like I said, on the pensions regulator website that kind of just talks through that process and gives you a bit of an action plan to get started. So definitely worth checking that. Great,
thank you, Chris. Then Hansa, there is another one for Chris, but we'll skip to you. How seamless will it be in the future if I want to take my company from a sole trader to a limited company regarding the accounts and cards for myself and team members?
So when you register for an account at Tide, you can register for either a sole trader or a limited. If you then need to switch, you can then do so by either through their app or contacting member support, and they can then help you through that process. One really great thing about Tide is we also help to incorporate your limited business as well as a sort of free of charge as part of that onboarding process. So yeah, if you contact if you go into your app and you go to let me just have a look. If you go to support and contact member support, someone will then be able to help you there and sort of guide you through that process.
Thank you. Then we have another one. We work in a salon and often our staff members work slightly different hours every week. Do you know if there's a way to automate payments if our staff work different hours every week, or is it best to work it out manually?
So you can actually, there's a couple of ways. If you've relatively small staff numbers, you might find it just easier in the pay run just to go and alter the amount of hours each person works, and you might do that each week, or you can actually just set up a spreadsheet, put in the number of hours into that they work, and just upload that into the payroll. And then that will automatically sort out the calculations for tax, for pensions, etc., and then automatically just generate the payment file. So there's a couple of simple ways of doing it. If I had 2 people, 3 people, I'd probably just go in, set it up so that the pay rate comes through and the pay line comes through, and then just amend the hours. If I had 8 or 9 people, and potentially if they had multiple pay categories, they might have a different amount for rate for overtime, then I'd probably just create a really simple little spreadsheet and then just amend that every week and just upload that, and I'm done. And I can still automate the pay run. So you can still have an automated pay run as long as you remember to upload that information before the day it's going to run. It will still do everything else automatically.
Great, thank you, Chris. Then we have one on the differences between premium and cashback membership. So, I mean, just to touch on this, obviously, you know, the main difference with cashback is the fact that you have the opportunity to earn cashback. There's also you'd have an account manager, you would have VIP access to, you know, any kind of communication with Tide itself. So we will get in touch with you though to go through the exact differences, so you can see, you know, what the difference is and what would really be worthwhile for you. Then I think the other one, Hansa, for you, I'm a Tide cashback member. Will I get cashback from all the employees' expenses or only mine? And when the cashback will be added to my account?
Yes, that's correct. So when your team members spend on that account, the cashback that you'll gain from that will sort of be sort of included. So it will, I believe it's on a sort of monthly basis. So yeah, very good news. So yeah, if your employees spend more, then yeah, you'll get more cashback. So yeah, that's part of the package.
Perfect. Then I see we have one other one. Do you plan to have a different sort code or another one, or this one to be kept for longer? I think we might have to get in touch with you, Kevin, to just understand your question a bit better.
Kevin, so Kevin, in terms of your Tide account, you can actually have up to 4 accounts, and then you'll have an account and sort code number for that. So when it comes to, let's say, ordering expense cards for your team members, you'll then order the card for the account. So what we've experienced is if you really want to be organized, you might have different accounts for different things. So you'll have an expense specific account, or you'll have an account to do your payroll, and actually what our members are doing is they can then order expense cards for that expense account in particular, and then you'll know that the account and sort code is from that. And then I also just want to touch on, I'm just quickly talking to a payments product manager, and your IBAN requests have definitely been heard, and it's sort of in sort of development at the moment. So we're looking at between sort of 2+ months at the moment. So yes, 6 to 8 weeks in terms of pushing that live. So I just wanted to let you all know that that's sort of in progress and on the roadmap.
Great, thanks so much, Hansa. Thanks for getting that input for us. I think we pretty much, there was just another comment from Kevin off the back of your answer, Hansa.
It still comes up as Prepay Technologies. Yes, so Prepay Technologies is our payments provider that we utilize, and we're sort of at the moment in the process of moving over to ClearBank. So that is something that you will then see. I know that whenever you make a spend, it will come up as that. But yeah, we're sort of in the sort of process of sort of migrating over, so that will be the case. But the sort code and account is the one that's then tied as in tied to tied. So yeah.
And I've just, so you know, David, I've just answered your question. I just typed an answer in about having multiple pension schemes and everyone going into one. So basically, an employer only needs to provide one pension scheme. They can provide two, but it needs to be very clear when an employee joins which one they would go in. So it's not to give the employee a choice, but sometimes you might have a different pension provider for the directors than you might do for the employees. So there's a written answer in there somewhere, but just to kind of pull that one out.
Perfect, thanks, Chris. And then Hansa, there's the question from David on the affiliate program for introducing new clients.
So I believe we have an introduction sort of offer. So when you then join Tide and you refer someone to join, you can then invite your friends and then get I think £50 back. So have a look within the referral app scheme. Actually, let me just so actually let me just quickly share my screen if that's okay, Lauren.
Sure. We've got 3 minutes left, so
yeah. So just on that, so you can see if you go into your Tide app and you go into the more menu, you'll see invite friends to Tide and get £50, and then you'll have a referral code that you can then use. So yeah, that will be really good. So yeah, invite your friends.
Perfect. Thanks so much. So yeah, I think that brings us to the end of the session today. Thank you again to Hansa and Chris for joining us. And thank you to everyone that attended today. It's been great to have you with us. And we look forward to having you at future events. Hope everyone has a good rest of the day today.
Brilliant.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.